What's up, guys? It's me, Dominique, aka That Therapist. I am the lead clinician and CEO for a group practice known as Yellow Bird Counseling. What is that? What's the Yellow Bird Counseling? What do you do? Well, our normal day-to-day activities include providing individual, couples, family, and group therapy across the state of Alabama. So that's what we do on our normal day-to-day basis. And we serve adults, we serve children, we serve couples. Again, we serve families, we serve elderly. Thank you so much, Paige. We service men, women, they, thems. We actually love to cater to our BIPOC and LGBTQ folks. So that's where we like to stick with things, but we do serve anybody else who would like to be serviced by us. We just provide a safe space for those communities because they're underserved. Okay. But we'll serve, we can serve others as well if you're not in those two communities. We have plenty of clients that are not in those two communities that we service. But we definitely want to make it clear that we provide a safe space for them. All right. So what do we do here on social media, though? Well, every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 6 p.m. Pacific, which is 7 p.m. Mountain, we present topics that the general population can relate to and tie it back to how we could all use a therapist outside of having a mental illness, right? So that's what we do. That's what we try to build awareness, and like my shirt says, break the stigma. If you can see it, I don't know if you can see it. There, you can see it. It's breaking a stigma breaking with the mental health awareness flag behind it, but breaking the stigma. So yeah, we do that on Thursdays. That's what we do. And we've been doing that since 2019. That's what we've been doing. We just gathered up more platforms, but we've been going live on Thursdays for quite some time now. And still coming up with new things. But so that's what we do, okay? If you want to help us join in breaking the stigma, please share the live. That's all you got to do. It's really free to help, super free to help. If you'll just share the live with a couple folks, tell them to come on in here and chill with us, because I'm sure that tonight's topic is going to be something that we all can relate to, okay? It's going to be relatable to most everyone, because we all have to do it at one point or another in our lives, okay? What? Oh, I was like, I hate that it blocks y'all's comments. I hate that. It blocks the comments. So yeah, definitely share so we can, gather up people that may be having trouble with coping, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Thank you. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much for the gifts. I appreciate the gifts. Thank you. Let's start, where we like to start. Ideally, I like to start with a definition, because people misuse words a lot of the time, which alters our understanding if we're not using words correctly. So I want to be sure that we're all on the same page before we continue. I want to be sure that we're all talking about the same thing when we're talking about coping, okay? Because it's not just like, we're not just going to gloss over. Some people, let me just ask this. Let me see. Tell me in the comments what you think it means to cope. Do that. Tell me in the comments, what does that mean to cope? And that's gonna set the stage for why I gotta share a definition. But tell me in your best explanation, your best concise, right, definition, what is coping? What does that mean for a person to cope? Tell me Tell me, put it in the comments. What does it mean to cope? All right. And while y'all are doing that, let me gather up Google, right? Let me gather Google up. So we're going to talk about, I just want to gather a basic definition of coping. All right. I got it. I got it for y'all from wikipedia.org. I got it from wikipedia.org. So, anyways, let me know. Do y'all have an idea of what coping is? Y'all don't want to take a guess? Okay. All right. Well, all right, fine. I got you. So, y'all ready? Listen. Coping refers to the conscious or unconscious strategies used to reduce and manage unpleasant emotions, okay? So it's things that we're aware of or things that we're not aware of that we do to cope with unpleasant emotions, right? Or to manage, rather. You don't say the word you're defining to define the word you're defining, right? That doesn't make sense. But to manage unpleasant emotions, okay? All right, so coping refers to conscious or unconscious. That's important, right? Because sometimes you do things that you don't even realize you're doing to cope through something. So, for example, if you notice that when you get nervous, you like to rub your hands together, and maybe you don't notice that that's what you're doing until somebody brings it to your attention, right? But you're like, oh, yeah. So maybe something like that. Or maybe anxiety's way of coping, which is a maladaptive coping, which means not good way of coping, is to worry. Okay. Anxiety will just worry without solution. So maybe that's conscious to you, maybe that's unconscious to you, but that is also a way of coping, right? The worrying, even though it doesn't really help you manage it, your anxiety will tell you that worrying will help you manage your anxiety. Okay? You see where I'm going with this? Coping strategies can be conditions or behaviors and can be individual or social. All right? So there are coping strategies that people engage in that can be cognitions, such as thoughts, right? Or behaviors, the things that you do. So not only can coping be conscious or unconscious way of managing unpleasant emotions, it can also be thoughts or behaviors. Okay, those are the two ways you can manage those unpleasant behaviors unpleasant emotions is with thoughts or behaviors. Okay. These behaviors can be individual behaviors, meaning something you do by yourself, or something that you do socially. Okay. So if you, as I'm building this definition, try to see if you can apply it to real life circumstances that you've actually been in. To cope is to deal with struggles and difficulties in life, right? So I said this is something that we all do. If you don't have struggles or difficulties in your life, this is not the life for you. I repeat, if you are somebody that does not have struggles or difficulties in your life, this is not the life for you. If you got a perfect life, this is probably going to be super boring, okay? If you got a perfect life with conditions that you can always control and nothing ever happens to you that's unforeseen, then great for you. You have graduated. You probably don't need therapy, right? If you're that person. But for the other 99% of us, let's keep watching, okay? Because this applies to not only me, but I'm sure you and you and you as well, okay? All right, so to cope is to deal with struggles and difficulties in life. It is a way for people to maintain their mental and emotional well-being. Everybody has ways of handling difficult events that occur in life, and that is what I had to open it up. Sorry. Where was I? And that is what it means to cope. Coping can be healthy and productive or destructive and unhealthy. Remember I was saying the maladaptive? That's maladaptive. Coping is the unhealthy and destructive. So there's not only two ways to cope, right? Coping just means you're unpleasant emotions. That's what it means. So you can either do that consciously or unconsciously. You can manage it with thoughts or behaviors, right? And you can manage it in good ways and in bad ways. So you see, we're building it up. There's two options. There's two sides to coping. All right? Two options and or two sides to it, right? So it is recommended that an individual cope in ways that will be beneficial and healthy. Managing your stress well can help you feel better physically and psychologically, and it can impact your ability to perform, and it can impact your ability to perform your best. So there's an important outcome to choose to consider when you're figuring out how you want to cope with something. Do you want it to be something that helps you feel better long term, or better only short term and not so great long term, right? So you can manage something in the short term that only makes you feel good right then, but then long term that decision doesn't really pan out well. That would be maybe an unhealthy way of coping. Then there are healthy ways of coping that may take some time for you to see, but if you do it over time, it'll help you to cope long term. Okay? So you got to decide within yourself, am I somebody that wants a short term fix with maybe long term, there's no benefit or little benefit long term? Or do I want something that may take a minute, but long term it's going to last me? So you got to decide which of those categories you want to be in. That's important because that's going to largely determine how you cope with unpleasant emotions, which, unless you're one of those perfect people I was talking about that can manage your like you have complete control over anything that happens to you, this ain't for you. This is for those of us that don't have control over every single thing as best as we might want to, right? We don't have control over everything because there are variables outside of us, like other people. Other people is a variable you can't control. Sometimes, depending on the size of the environment, your environment. And when you add new people to your environment, it even becomes less easy to control. Okay? It becomes way harder to control an environment when you involve people and circumstances and environmental variables outside of your own person, pretty much. Because your own person is really all you can really control. And maybe if it's your home, you have more control over it, but you probably have less control over your home than you have over your own body, maybe. And sometimes even your own body can be something that you can't control, right? So for those of y'all that I can control, no, you can't. There are circumstances. Think about it. Think about it. People get sick all the time and didn't know that they were going to get sick. And that's your own person. And they couldn't control that. It was unforeseen, right? People have lost their jobs. People have lost their homes. So you see what I'm saying? Control is very hard. So you have to be able to cope with what you can't control. And you have two options for that. You can sweep it under the rug. You can address it head on. You can utilize cognitions, or we like to call them positive affirmations, to cope. You can utilize behavioral techniques such as grounding to cope, right? You can do, those are the healthy ones, or you could do the unhealthy ones, such as engaging in substances, maybe taking your anger out on other people, right? Avoiding it. Avoiding is also a way of coping. Okay. So, do you see how coping, when I build the definition up for you, it's not just as easy as it is to say the word cope. You actually have to be strategic about it in order to do it well. We all could use therapy for that, because I'm sure there's at least one person that says, well, I don't know how to cope then, right? That is where a therapist comes in. A therapist is trained to help you cope strategically, right? It's not just going in and talking to somebody. It's not just sitting on the couch and saying what your problems are. It is being strategic about a strategy. Strategic about a method to help you manage unpleasant emotions in your own life. Okay? If you don't have any unpleasant emotions in your own life, and you've never experienced unpleasant emotions, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to all the rest of us humans who have. The other 99% of us who have, right? Talking to you. That is what therapy is for, to help you learn to cope, right? Has there ever been a situation in your life where you're like, where you've said, I don't know how I'm going to get through this? Does that phrase sound familiar to anybody? I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Again, that is how you utilize coping. The way that you get through it is the coping, and you have the option to choose something that could be short-term, a short-term fix, like utilizing a substance that'll help you feel good short-term, or yelling at somebody who hadn't done anything to you. That's another short-term coping skill. But those are also maladaptive. Do you notice how coping in those ways could probably not be good ideas for long-term consequences? Use of substance or going off on people unnecessarily. Do you see how long-term that might not be the best way to go about things? Well, then you have the healthy coping, right? That may take a little longer, but it's going to have a longer term benefit as well. Well, what are those, that therapist? Don't worry, I got you. One of them that I utilize a lot is slow, controlled breaths, right? And a lot of you are like, oh, that's so easy. Well, if it's so easy, why ain't you done it? Oh, that ain't gonna work. How do you know if you haven't tried it? It's easy to say what won't work or all of that when you haven't tried something. I've taught many of my clients how to breathe correctly, and they say, oh my gosh, it's actually one of my favorite things to do. Who would have thought that breathing could become one of your favorite things to do, right? When you do it correctly, it has a much different effect than when you're just unconsciously breathing because your body needs oxygen, right? When you're strategic and you allow yourself to be taught how to do better, you can engage in behaviors that will help you. So that was just one example. My clients who have learned to engage in more strategic breathing to manage their symptoms of stress and anxiety, they're able to get through, they're able to cope with the challenges of life that they can't control a lot easier. Okay. Wouldn't it be nice if you felt overwhelmed just for things to feel easier? Right? If all you could control is how you felt about something, would it be nice to be at least able to do that? Would it be nice to be able to manage how you feel about a circumstance, even if you can't change the circumstance itself right then? And then when you feel better, right, it's a lot easier for you to do things to improve your circumstance. Now, this is just light level coping. There are other ways of coping, but I'm using this very entry level way of coping because most people can probably relate to that. Of course, there's coping with trauma. So then you would utilize trauma-based therapies to cope with that. There's coping with a physical illness, right? There are other medical ways to cope with that, but I'm talking about coping at its most basic level. And I'm doing that so that people can relate to it, right? There are more complex ways of coping, but I'm making it as general and as simplistic as possible so that everybody catches on, okay? So that the most general group of people can catch on. There are nuances to coping, right? And that is another thing that therapy can help you with, because maybe slow, controlled, deep breaths in and of itself is not enough for you. So you have to build on to that. That is where therapy comes into play. Remember, the whole goal of our lives is to help the general population understand how we could all benefit from therapy outside of having a mental illness. Having a life circumstance happen to you doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. It just means that you live in a world that you can't control. And sometimes the outcomes of what you can't control cause unpleasant emotions. Unpleasant emotions is also not a mental illness. It's just a part of human existence that we have to learn how to manage so that we can go on to keep living. Okay? Is this making sense to everybody? Is this making sense? I hope so. I hope so. I wanted to talk generally about coping. We can think of coping strategies, right? Therapy is one of the bigger ones. Taking medication as prescribed. Going to bed and waking up at the same time. That's also a great healthy coping skill. Trying to eat a balanced diet as best you can is also a healthy coping skill. Okay? And then I'll say these and you might say, oh, I don't know how to do it, or I can't do it, or I did that and didn't work. Try going to therapy and telling your therapist you want that as a treatment plan goal, and then come back to me and tell me. Do it for a treatment plan goal for 30 days. And if it still don't work, come back and tell me. Go to a therapist. Tell them what you done already tried and how it didn't work. Have them put it as a treatment plan goal. And you come back in 30 days and tell me if it still don't work. Okay? Okay? Do that. But there are other basic ways to cope. So going to bed, waking up on time, having healthy boundaries. Okay, having boundaries for family, having boundaries for friends, having boundaries for work, having boundaries for coworkers. Those are other boundaries, are another way to help you cope in a healthy way. Are y'all getting it? Is this making sense? You getting it? Perfect. I'm glad you're getting it. I'm glad you're getting it. Good. Good. It's important to know what to consider when we're talking about coping, because people just kind of use that word. And I'm sure there's a couple folks that when I said, what does it mean to cope? You kind of got stuck because you weren't sure what it meant to actually cope. So now that I've broken it down, you may have a better understanding and knowledge about what it means to cope, right? Some other ways to cope, if you're an anxious person like me, I'm very anxious. So things that help me cope is to try to develop a plan. And before that, I would cope with avoidance before, right? Avoidance used to be a way I used to cope, but now I'm able to look at it and say, okay, here's a plan. And then just kind of do what I can and breathe through what I can't control, right? Use my slow, controlled, deep breath for the portion I can't control. And then the energy or the clarity that I get from my slow, controlled, deep breaths, I use that to make a plan. Okay. I do other things too. Like I go to therapy, hash it out with my therapist, because sometimes I don't know what a plan is. And so I need help to figure out what's a good plan. So I go talk to my therapist so she can help me figure out what a good plan would be, because nobody knows everything, and everything in your life you're not going to always know how to deal with, right? And there are several things that I've been like, man, I don't really know what to do, so I have to go and seek advice. And y'all do it more than what you think. Think about all the times you go to your friend and ask them what you should do about something, and then they give you sometimes they give you the most unhealthy advice, and you do that, and then that's why therapists don't give advice, for that very reason. Advice is for your friends to give you, but therapists, we help guide you to a solution that's going to work best for you as an individual. We're not going to say you should do what we do, right? Because what we do might not work for you, but your friends don't understand that. Their friends think, well, it worked for them, so it might work for you, or they think it worked for them and it really didn't work for them. They just think it did. And then look at where they at. They might not be in the most favorable situations themselves. Okay. So definitely you want to be sure. Definitely you want to be sure that you're strategic about how you cope. Yep, friends give advice, therapists give tools. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So, and if I had to go to my own therapist, that still means that I don't know it all, right? And I'm okay with that. But I think that it makes me a better therapist because I do go to my own therapy, because I'm able to see my problems before my clients, right? I can see my problems before my clients see them and cope with them before my clients see them. Or if I'm unsure, I know how to go to my therapist and express what I'm unsure about so that we can get to the bottom of it a lot quicker. Yeah. Yeah. This is important. I wanted to start this month off with this topic because seasonal affective disorder, or SAD season, is about to start, and it usually starts around October, and people notice feeling it through March. So October through March, you might notice not feeling as great as you would the other months. April through April through September, you might notice feeling better than you do October through March, because it's sad season, right? You're probably really going to notice it when the time change happens, when the daylight savings. We think that there is some connection to the amount of sunlight that we're getting and seasonal affective disorder. So that's just some theory around that. I will talk more about that and how to cope specifically with that in the coming weeks. But I did want you to first gather your basic information about knowing how to cope, so you can decide if you're going to cope through this season strategically or destructively. It's your choice. In therapy, we always stress the fact that you can make your own choices, right? Make your own choices. What kind of questions do y'all have? What kind of questions do you have? Or do you have any questions? I'm looking to see, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Y'all don't? Good. Perfect. Well, I'm glad. I like to give information in bite-sized pieces. So again, because I'm presenting for the general public, right? So people are on different levels of understanding and experience, so I want to be sure that I provide the most basic information, tell you what it is you need to know, and then tell you how to go get more information, which is through therapy. So for those of you that are here in the state of Alabama, for those of you in Alabama, anybody on any of our platforms can definitely click the link in our bios to get our information, but also this is our information. Y'all don't have it. Y'all can just click the link in my bio, but you can text the word new to this number. You can text the word new to that number, take a screenshot, take a screenshot, take a screenshot, take a screenshot, take a screenshot. There you go. And then you can text the word new to this number. Okay? Perfect. Perfect. Well, if y'all don't have any questions, I'm going to let that simmer for you. I'm going to let that simmer. And we'll pick up next week with coping through sad season and then holiday season coming. All right? Yes. I'll see y'all next time.